Queen Mary's silent battle, the scandalous rumors that nearly destroyed Denmark's royal marriage. Welcome to B News. What do you do when the entire world is watching your marriage crumble in real time, when photographers capture every strained smile, when millions of strangers dissect every public appearance searching for signs of betrayal? In the glittering world of European royalty, where image is everything and privacy is a luxury that simply doesn't exist, one woman has faced this nightmare scenario with a dignity that has left even her harshest critics speechless. Queen Mary of Denmark, the Australian-born commoner who became one of Europe's most admired royal figures, has spent the past year navigating a storm of rumors, speculation, and public scrutiny that would have destroyed most marriages, royal or otherwise. The whispers began innocently enough, barely noticeable ripples in the calm waters of what seemed like a fairy tale marriage. But by late 2023 and throughout 2024, those whispers had become a roaring tsunami of scandal, with tabloids across Europe screaming headlines about alleged infidelity, separate living arrangements, and an impending royal divorce that would rival the drama of Charles and Diana. Through it all, Queen Mary has maintained a composure so perfect, a grace so unshakable, that she has transformed what could have been her greatest humiliation into perhaps her finest hour. But behind the carefully maintained facade, behind the flawless fashion choices and the practiced smiles, what has this ordeal really cost her? And how has she managed to not only survive but emerge stronger from what many are calling the greatest crisis to face the Danish royal family in modern history? The story of how Queen Mary confronted these devastating rumors reveals not just the reality of royal life in the social media age, but also the extraordinary strength of a woman who refused to let scandal define her. Before we dive deep into Queen Mary's remarkable journey through this crisis, I need you to become part of our community. If you're fascinated by the real stories behind royal headlines, the human drama beneath the tiaras and protocol, then subscribe to B News right now. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our in-depth coverage of the royal families that captivate the world. And if you're already amazed by Queen Mary's grace under pressure, show your support by leaving a like on this video. Your engagement helps us continue bringing you the stories that matter. Now, let's uncover the truth about what really happened behind those palace walls. The fairy tale that seemed destined to have a perfect ending began in the most unlikely of places, a crowded pub in Sydney, Australia, during the 2000 Summer Olympics. Mary Elizabeth Donaldson was a 28-year-old advertising executive enjoying the festivities when she met a charming European tourist who introduced himself simply as Fred. What Mary didn't initially realize was that this handsome stranger was actually Crown Prince Frederik of Denmark, heir to one of Europe's oldest thrones, who was visiting Australia incognito to enjoy the Olympics without the burden of his royal identity. Their connection was immediate and genuine, unmarred by the complications of his royal status, at least for that magical first evening. When Mary eventually learned who Fred really was, she faced a choice that would define the rest of her life: walk away from what could become an impossibly complicated relationship, or take a leap of faith into a world completely foreign to her middle-class Australian upbringing. She chose love, and what followed was a long-distance romance that captured hearts around the world. Frederik would visit Australia, Mary would travel to Denmark, and slowly, carefully, their relationship deepened despite the enormous challenges of his position and the intense media scrutiny that began once their romance became public knowledge. Mary dedicated herself to learning Danish, studying Danish history and culture, and preparing for a role she had never imagined for herself. Their engagement was announced in 2003, and on May 14, 2004, in a ceremony broadcast to millions worldwide, Mary Donaldson became Crown Princess Mary of Denmark. The wedding was a spectacular affair at Copenhagen's cathedral, and the images of the radiant bride and her besotted prince seemed to promise a lifetime of happiness. Over the next 2 decades, Mary and Frederik built what appeared to be an ideal royal life, welcoming 4 children: Crown Prince Christian, born 2005, Princess Isabella, born 2007, and twins Prince Vincent and Princess Josephine, born 2011, while establishing themselves as hardworking, dedicated royals who modernized the monarchy while respecting its traditions. Mary, in particular, won widespread admiration for her work on social issues, particularly domestic violence and bullying, and for the grace and intelligence she brought to every royal duty. By all appearances, the Donaldson girl from Tasmania had not just adapted to royal life, she had excelled at it. But beneath the surface of this seemingly perfect royal marriage, cracks had begun to form long before they became visible to the public eye. Those close to the royal couple later revealed that the pressures of royal life, the constant scrutiny, the endless obligations, the impossibility of privacy, and the weight of knowing that every aspect of your existence is subject to public judgment, had taken their toll over the years. Frederik, who had lived his entire life in the royal spotlight, sometimes struggled with the constraints of his position, occasionally seeking escape through activities and friendships outside the rigid structure of palace life. Mary, meanwhile, had sacrificed everything familiar: her country, her career, her family proximity, her very identity as Mary Donaldson, to become Crown Princess Mary, and later Queen Mary. The transformation required was total and irreversible, and while she accomplished it with remarkable success, the personal cost was enormous. Friends described her as sometimes feeling isolated, particularly during Denmark's long, dark winters, missing the warmth and casualness of her Australian homeland. The couple's relationship, while still fundamentally strong, had evolved in ways that long marriages often do: less passionate spontaneity, more comfortable routine, with both partners sometimes taking each other for granted. They had become not just husband and wife, but colleagues in the business of monarchy, sometimes so focused on their public duties that their private connection suffered. Yet none of this necessarily indicated serious problems. Most long-term marriages experience similar phases, and many royal couples throughout history have maintained successful partnerships built more on mutual respect and shared duty than constant romance. However, in late 2023, something happened that would transform these private marital dynamics into a very public crisis that threatened everything Mary and Frederik had built together. The spark that ignited the firestorm came in November 2023, when Spanish magazine Lecturas published photographs that would send shockwaves through royal circles across Europe. The images showed Crown Prince Frederik, as he was then, before his mother's abdication, in Madrid, Spain, enjoying an evening out with Mexican-born socialite Genoveva Casanova. The photos captured the pair walking through the city streets, attending what appeared to be a private art exhibition, and later entering an apartment building together, with Frederik not emerging until the following morning. The implication was clear and explosive: Denmark's future king was allegedly engaged in an extramarital affair. The timing could hardly have been worse. Queen Mary was back in Denmark with their children, dutifully attending to royal obligations, while her husband was supposedly conducting a romantic liaison in Spain. The media response was immediate and merciless. Danish tabloids, usually respectful of the royal family, felt compelled to cover the story given its international prominence. British, Spanish, Australian, and tabloids across Europe ran headlines ranging from subtly suggestive to explicitly accusatory. Social media exploded with commentary, speculation, and judgment. The story dominated royal watching communities, with amateur sleuths analyzing every detail of the photographs, examining the timeline of events, and comparing this situation to previous royal scandals. Genoveva Casanova quickly issued a statement vehemently denying any romantic involvement with Frederik, calling the insinuations categorically false, and claiming they were simply friends who had attended cultural events together with other people present. She threatened legal action against publications that implied otherwise. The Danish royal household issued a brief, carefully worded statement saying that the Crown Prince's trip to Madrid was private and that they would not comment further on his private affairs, a response that many interpreted as neither confirming nor denying the allegations, which only fueled further speculation. But most tellingly, there was complete silence from both Frederik and Mary themselves, creating a vacuum that the media eagerly filled with endless analysis and conjecture. In the weeks and months following the Madrid photographs, Queen Mary's response to this crisis became a masterclass in royal dignity and strategic public relations. Rather than issuing emotional statements, granting tell-all interviews, or displaying any public signs of distress, Mary did something far more powerful: she simply continued being an exemplary queen. In the immediate aftermath of the scandal breaking, Mary maintained her scheduled appearances with perfect composure. At a gala event just days after the photos were published, she appeared in a stunning gown, her makeup flawless, her smile genuine, interacting with guests with her characteristic warmth and intelligence. If she was devastated privately, and sources close to her confirmed she absolutely was, the public saw none of it. This wasn't denial or pretense, it was a deliberate choice to refuse to let scandal define her or diminish her dignity. Throughout December 2023, as the speculation continued to swirl, Mary increased her public profile, taking on additional engagements and showcasing her work with various charitable organizations. She was photographed with her children, presenting an image of a devoted mother whose priority was protecting her family's stability. Significantly, she also began appearing more frequently alongside Frederik at official functions, both of them presenting a united front even as tabloids continued to question the state of their marriage. The body language experts and royal commentators who made their living analyzing such things noted that while perhaps not displaying the warmth of newlyweds, Mary and Frederik showed none of the obvious signs of a couple in crisis, no visible tension, no careful distancing, no failure to coordinate their public presentations. Then came the announcement that changed everything. On December 31, 2023, Queen Margrethe II announced her intention to abdicate, and on January 14, 2024, Frederik ascended to the throne as King Frederik X, with Mary becoming Queen Mary. Some speculated that Margrethe's decision to abdicate at this particular moment was strategic, designed to redirect public attention from the scandal to the historic transition and to solidify Frederik and Mary's position in a way that would make their marriage too important to fail. Whether or not this was intentional, the effect was undeniable. Suddenly the narrative shifted from troubled crown prince possibly having affair to Denmark's new king and queen beginning historic new era. As we move through 2024 and into November 2025, the question of how Queen Mary truly navigated this crisis becomes clearer through the accounts of palace insiders, royal biographers, and careful observation of the choices she made both publicly and privately. According to sources close to the royal household, Mary's initial reaction to the Madrid photographs was, understandably, one of hurt and betrayal, not necessarily because she believed the worst, but because Frederik's judgment in putting himself in such a compromising situation showed, at minimum, a serious lack of respect for their marriage and for her. The fact that these photos existed at all, regardless of what actually happened that evening, was itself a form of betrayal because it exposed their private relationship to public speculation and judgment. However, Mary also recognized something that many people facing similar situations do not, that her response to this crisis would define not just this moment, but potentially the rest of her life and her children's futures. She could choose the path of public confrontation, emotional exposure, and potential separation, options that might provide personal satisfaction but would come at enormous cost. Or she could choose dignity, strategic patience, and a focus on the bigger picture of her role, her children, and the institution she had spent 2 decades serving. She chose the latter, but not passively. Sources indicate that Mary insisted on serious private conversations with Frederik about boundaries, respect, and the non-negotiable requirements of their partnership going forward. She reportedly made clear that while she would support him publicly and work to preserve their family and the monarchy, he needed to demonstrate through actions, not words, that he understood the gravity of what had happened and was committed to rebuilding trust. Frederik, for his part, appears to have taken these conversations seriously, significantly modifying his public behavior and being far more conscious about avoiding situations that could be misinterpreted or exploited by media. Throughout 2024 and into 2025, Frederik and Mary have been seen together regularly, attending state functions, supporting each other's causes, and presenting themselves as genuine partners. More importantly, they have been photographed repeatedly with their children in more casual, seemingly unscripted moments, at sporting events, family outings, and summer holiday activities, showing a family that, while perhaps imperfect like all families, remains fundamentally united and functional. The broader implications of Queen Mary's handling of this crisis extend far beyond one royal marriage to reflect changing expectations of royal women and the complex negotiations between personal dignity and public duty that define modern monarchy. Queen Mary's approach stands in stark contrast to how royal women of previous generations handled similar situations. Think of Princess Diana's cooperation with Andrew Morton's biography and her subsequent BBC interview, which were acts of rebellion against the royal establishment but came at tremendous personal and institutional cost. Mary has chosen a different path, one that some might criticize as too accommodating or insufficiently feminist, but which others recognize as extraordinarily powerful in its own way. She has demonstrated that maintaining dignity and composure is not the same as being weak or submissive. Rather, it can be a form of strength that refuses to give critics and scandal mongers the emotional reaction they seek. By not engaging with the rumors, by not defending herself publicly, by simply continuing to be excellent at her role, Mary has made the scandal increasingly irrelevant over time. The initial explosive interest has gradually faded, not because any definitive truth was established, but because there was simply nothing more to say. Frederik and Mary carried on being king and queen, and life moved forward. This approach has particular relevance in the social media age, where scandal can be amplified instantaneously but also forgotten quickly if not continuously fed with new developments. Mary understood intuitively what communications professionals often miss. Sometimes the best response to a scandal is simply to outlast it. Moreover, Queen Mary's handling of this situation has actually enhanced her public standing rather than diminishing it. Polling conducted in Denmark throughout 2024 and 2025 has consistently shown that Mary's approval ratings remain extremely high, in many surveys, even higher than King Frederik's. Danish people, and royal watchers internationally, have recognized the grace with which she has handled an impossible situation, and this has generated not pity but admiration and respect. She has become an icon of resilience, demonstrating that it is possible to face public humiliation with dignity and emerge stronger. Young women, particularly, have looked to her as an example of how to navigate difficult relationships and public scrutiny with integrity and tact. The crisis that could have destroyed Queen Mary's reputation has instead solidified it, transforming her from simply a well-liked royal consort into a figure of genuine cultural significance whose response to adversity has become part of her enduring legacy. As we conclude this examination of Queen Mary's remarkable navigation of one of modern royalty's most difficult personal crises, we're left with profound questions about marriage, duty, privacy, and the impossible expectations placed on those who live their lives in the public eye. Queen Mary's story reminds us that behind every carefully crafted public image is a real human being dealing with real pain, real doubts, and real challenges, but sometimes choosing to handle those challenges privately rather than performing their suffering for public consumption. Whether the rumors about King Frederik were entirely unfounded, partially true, or completely accurate, we may never definitively know. What we do know is that Queen Mary made a conscious choice about how to respond, prioritizing her children's stability, the institution she serves, and her own long-term dignity over any temporary satisfaction that public confrontation might have provided. This doesn't make her a victim or a doormat, it makes her a strategist who understood that sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. As November 2025 unfolds, Mary continues her work as Queen of Denmark with the same intelligence, compassion, and dedication she has always shown, while the scandals of 2023 fade increasingly into the background, becoming a footnote rather than the defining story of her reign. Her marriage to Frederik appears to have survived and possibly even been strengthened by the crisis, as challenging experiences often force couples to either fall apart or recommit to their partnership with greater intentionality. And Mary herself has emerged as one of Europe's most respected royal figures, admired not despite the crisis she faced, but in large part because of how she faced it. Now I want to hear from you, because Queen Mary's story raises questions that extend far beyond palace walls to touch on issues we all face in our own lives and relationships. Here's what I'm asking. Do you think Queen Mary was right to maintain her dignity and privacy rather than publicly addressing the rumors, or do you believe she should have been more open about her feelings and the state of her marriage? In an age of social media and instant information, is it even possible for public figures to maintain privacy around personal crises, or should we expect transparency from those whose positions are funded by public money? And more broadly, what would you have done in Queen Mary's position? Would you have handled it the same way, or would you have taken a different approach? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below. I'm genuinely interested in your perspective on this complex situation.